Hey, and welcome back to Legacy Builders with Bryan Dulaney. I have a special guest with us today, and I'm especially excited about this interview with a friend and partner who I've had the opportunity to meet more than 5 years ago, who my team and I helped to launch his expertise online, scale his impact, and build a legacy that will certainly go on for future generations. Now, when he launched his expertise online, he was really not in a good place and was really thinking that funnels and online marketing wouldn't even work for his business. Imagine that. He was at that place. Wanted to go back to a referral-based only business, and thank God he did it. Have you ever been there? Well, that's where he was. Then over the course of 90 days of working with my team and I, we helped him to launch his expertise online, and now he's generated more than $50 million in online revenue. I'm excited for Bryan Dulaney to share the journey of launching his expertise, scaling his impact, and building a legacy. All right, super pumped to be here with my man, Ryan D. Lee with Cashflow Tactics. Ryan, super glad to have you here and jump into Legacy Builders. And just to pre-frame where we're going with this conversation, you know, Legacy Builders are people who use their knowledge, their expertise, their skills, and the results that they've been able to produce for themselves and others to serve others. And in return, they're richly blessed in the process. So super excited to have you with me today, Ryan, and sharing your expertise as it relates to being a legacy builder, because you're obviously a legacy builder. Otherwise, we wouldn't have you here with us.
Oh, man. Right? Yeah, it's such an honor to be with you, Bryan. And I love the concept of legacy building because, you know, I think as human beings, we've lost the value of time, right? Everything's compressed and condensed into these little short snippets, and all we think about is what's right in front of our face today. And, you know, I really feel like once you lift the pressure and start working with time, knowing, hey, man, I might be around for another 50, 60, 70, 80 years. So why don't I start making decisions today that will help me build, live, and lead a legacy life right now? And then you start working with time on your side instead of constantly working against time, making decisions based on what's right in front of you today, oftentimes at the detriment of the long-term legacy. So I love that mindset of legacy building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give everyone a high level of where we're going to go today. So to me, a high level of what a legacy builder is someone who launches their expertise to serve others. With that comes both income and impact, scaling that expertise and impact, right? So we don't have anyone on the show that hasn't scaled their expertise and impact and are in the process of continuing to scale it. And then lastly is building that legacy so that, you know, in 100 years from now, you're still making an impact on multiple levels, which is probably my most exciting topic that I can't wait to hear what you have to say about how you're planning, what you're building, what you're launching, what you're putting into place now so that, you know, 100 years from now, the torch can be passed from generation to generation and into the future,
Heck
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ryan, just so our audience knows a little bit about you and, you know, what we're talking about here, how many years would you say that you know, it took or, you know, to develop your expertise in the area of financial freedom? Like, let's go back and talk about that. Cause I think a lot of people think that, you know, they see success and it's like, oh, that's an overnight success. Right. But I really want to dive into your expertise specifically is, you know, helping people to become financially free. And that encompasses a lot of different things. Right. But how long did you develop working on that expertise?
Yeah, man. I'm going to say for a lifetime, right? Because, you know, before we ever built the companies that we have today, before we ever worked with you on what, you know, Cashflow Tactics and all the things that are now Cashflow Tactics, like I never built this for anyone else but myself. You know, Bryan, I think so much of anyone's legacy building journey has to start with their own personal transformation. And, you know, for me, you know, I kind of messed around as a young kid. You know, I didn't really take life seriously. And I ended up really on the verge of, I could have gone either way. I could have been like living in the gutter or maybe even dead by now, or I could have been where I'm at today. And luckily I chose to go the route where I did something impactful and important with my life. But I thought important with my life was the traditional mindset. You go to school, you get a job, you put your money, you know, steadily and consistently into a 401k, you cross your fingers and hope that it works out. And, you know, on that path for me, you know, I was on that for 4 or 5 years and I started making, without knowing it in the moment, little teeny trade-offs, right? For those first 4 or 5 years as I climbed the corporate ladder, every promotion that I got, I made more money. But ultimately what happened is I made a trade-off. I stopped taking care of myself. I stopped investing in my relationships. I started living in different cities than my family because I traveled so much. And I kept telling myself, this is just what you do, right? This is just the way the game works. When I have enough money, then I'll come back and figure out my life. And I had a couple really pivotal moments in my life where I was literally on the verge of losing everything I really cared about. And those experiences woke me up to really re-tap into what's really important. At the end of the day, the money that's not what I wanted. I wanted to have a meaningful life. I wanted to be a good husband, a present father, and I was losing all of that. And, I found myself in that position, kind of trapped in between a rock and a hard place, because I didn't obviously know how to be financially free. And I was working to pursue that in a very traditional mindset, but I was losing what I cared about in the process. And so for me, once I found out that 401ks and IRAs, that's a game I can't control. That's a game that's going to take 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And I had to make a decision to walk away from what I call the cult of the average and do things differently. And as I did that, in the beginning, I kind of felt alone, right? There wasn't a whole lot of people around me. In fact, everyone said I was stupid. I was dumb. I took money out of my 401k. I stopped putting money in. I started buying real estate. I started using a very specific strategy. And Bryan, honestly, I failed a lot, but I was so committed to it that those failures turned into stepping stones, right? They turned into lessons. And over time, I found a little method and a strategy that worked for me. And as it worked for me, I started getting results, and those results started to come quick and fast. And as they did, I started having people ask me, what are you doing? How did you just walk away from a 6-figure job? Why are you not putting money in the marketplace? How are you buying real estate? All these things that I was doing. And I started showing people, right? I started sharing with them what I was doing. And I realized in that path that I actually loved helping people live their best life and removing the constraint of money. And in fact, and rather than having it be a constraint, to empower them with money. And that's ultimately what launched what is now Cashflow Tactics, but I built it for me. I'd never built this with the desire to help other people become financially free. I needed to figure out how to become financially free. And I thought, maybe I'd go sit on the beach or ride my bike for the rest of my life. But along the way, I realized that I also craved the fulfillment that came from using my God-given talents in the service of others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say was that catalyzing moment when you realized that other people needed your expertise, like what you had figured out for yourself, right? Like you had results for yourself, like you let go of that 6-figure job, you became financially free, like life was great. But what was that catalyzing moment you're like, I need to really bring this out to the world in a bigger way. I need to start doing stuff on the internet. I need to start reaching people online. I need to start a podcast. I need to start a show. You know what I mean?
Totally, man. I'll never forget, man. So, I had just walked away from my corporate job. I'd probably been out for maybe 6 months or so. And I'll never forget Wes Brown. Okay. Wes was a doctor. And he was probably 20 years my elder. When I first sat down and met with Wes, he saw what I was doing. He'd heard what I was doing through a friend of his. And I'd never forget, he was bold enough and audacious enough to say, look, will you just give me 2 hours of your time? Because up to that point, I'd just been giving people enough information that they asked me a question, I told them the answer, right? And I said, go do it. Go figure it out. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a program or a path or a methodology, but Wes said, hey, will you give me 2 hours of your time? And Wes came over to my house. We sat at my kitchen table. And for 2 hours, I coached this doctor who had several more years of education. He was in his late, probably mid 50s at the time, and didn't have anywhere near enough to retire, right? He was now looking down the barrel of, I might have to work as a doctor, even though I've made good money until my 70s or maybe even my 80s. And so I just walked him through and I said, look, Wes, knowing what I know and what you just told me about your goals and the resources that you're working with, here's exactly step-by-step the method that I would take if I were you. And he asked me questions and I detailed and I outlined, and we sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, and it was so fun to coach him. But here was the catalyst, or the turning point for me. Over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, he went out and he took action. And every action he would take, he'd come back and say, I did this. I have a question here. And I'd answer that question. Then he'd come back and say, I did this. It didn't work. What would I do here? And we just kind of tinkered with his strategy for the next couple of months until he got it. He got it. And Wes ended up walking away from his medical career in his early 60s. It took him like 4 years to do it, but it was so fun to watch that coaching process and then to watch someone go out and take action on that, get results, and have their life completely transform. And that was the catalyst for me to say, I really, really like doing this. I find a lot of fulfillment helping people live their best life and just giving them what now comes natural to me, just helping them course correct on a path and adopt a set of principles that give them consistent, reliable results.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. So that was like your first student, really. Except for he was live, he was in person,
and he ended up referring
over to your
bunch
house.
of like we did like 4 or 5 lunch and learns back in the day, right? Where he invited all his doctor friends, and it was his story. Like Wes then told his story of what he was doing and how it was giving him financial freedom, and we talked all to these doctors, and it just opened up this whole thing of, man, maybe I will work with people on this exact methodology because, as Wes shared other people, like I started applying the same principles of becoming financially free, but we tactically applied them a little bit different based on the individual, the goals that they had, the resources that they had, the age that they were. And the cool part was it was a principle-based approach, but it was tactically applied in a very unique way, depending on where the individual started. And it was so dang fun and still is to this day. I mean, that's still the core of what we do. It's just fun to help people tactically apply a game plan to become financially free in 10 years or less.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say is one of your most favorite stories thinking back since you've been doing this? Since you started doing it with Wes and then fast forward, you've served thousands of people. What's one of your most favorite stories of the impact you've had in someone else's life by giving them these
dude, I have so many. I'm just going to share. This one just came up just this morning. We just shared this on our team's huddle this morning. I'm going to pull up Facebook here really quick because this guy, his name's Eddie Aviles. And, the cool thing is I'm going to pull up in our side of our acceleration mastermind. So he's been in our community for about 3 years now. And he did this time lapse post inside of his post where he made a declaration on Facebook. I'm pulling it up right now in February 5th, 2015. And he said, I'm terrified, I'm scared, but I'm going to figure out how to become financially free. So this is back in 2015. He hadn't met us. He met us 3 years ago. So in, early 2019 timeframe. And then he wrote this big old long post inside of the community where he talks about all the things he did from 2015 to 2019 before he met us, all the start and stops, all the failures, all the, maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's, he put hedge investing, maybe it's fix and flip, all these different things that he tried and failed at. Then when he found Cashflow Tactics in 3 years, he was able to gain enough momentum to walk away from a corporate job. And his dream, like when people come in and work with us, they always think we're going to talk to them about finances. And yes, we talk about finances, but that's never where we start. We always start off with what they want, because unless you know what you want, right, it's really hard to work to this fuzzy outline. And most people think they want to retire, but it's so fuzzy in their mind. They don't know what that dream or vision is. So we help people get clear on what they want and why they want it. And then the third question that we enforce, that we make them ask is the only thing that's separating them from who they are, who they are today to who they, what they want to have in life is they have to become someone different. And so Eddie has this whole post here walking through all the things that he did, all the differences that he made. And his mission, his objective when he first set out with us was he wanted to walk away from his corporate job and join the family ministry. And just today, he posted this 13 hours ago where he did that. He quit his corporate job and he's stepping into the family ministry. And it's just, for me, that's the thing. Like, it's not, people think that they'll find themselves when they're 65 or 70 or when they have enough money. That's the most dangerous word. Life is present. Life is right now. And if you defer your dreams, defer your idea of what your life could be, it will never be that. You'll die with that song, with that desire, with that dream still in you. But if you can spark a vision and then be empowered with money and own your time, man, life can open up like a flower right in front of you today. And so it's fun to see that story.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, man. That's why, when we met back in Inner Circle, Russell Brunson's mastermind back, what was that, 2015?
Man, it's been a while.
Somewhere around that range. It's been a minute, but man, I immediately resonated with what you're doing because that's what so many people, I just see that model, that old broken model is so flawed, right? Wait till you're 65 to enjoy life. Wait till 65 to retire. Stop doing something that start doing something that you love to do when you're 65. That's ludicrous, and I mean, I've never thought that was a good strategy, even when I was in high school, So I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then I met you guys, and I'm super grateful that we had the opportunity to meet and then eventually take that snowboard trip. Here's the thing about legacy that I want to point out. I think how I would ask you how important, because at the end of the day, a legacy builder is someone who has knowledge, skills, expertise that they want to bless others with, right? How important do you feel that being financially independent is in order to leave a legacy that's gonna last several generations?
Yeah, man. I think it's paramount. I think it's 100% essential. And here's why. I think a lot of us have these misconceptions and preconceptions around money, and we think it's bad, it's evil, it's going to change us or whatever it is. But I mean, if we really step back and look at money objectively, money is an inanimate object, right? It has no good or bad values in and of itself. Money will reflect the values that you and I have, right? And so money by itself isn't bad. It's how you use the money that will make a good impact or a negative impact in your life and people around you. But here's the challenge that I find with so many people. They have dreams, they have visions, they have this desire to be more, and they know somewhere deep down inside of them that they're capable of more. But they put that up on a shelf because they don't have enough money. And until they have the ability to control their time and to wake up in the morning and say, what am I going to do with my time? Not because money is the primary driver of my life, but because I want to do something fulfilling, to use my talents in the service of others. Like, until that's how people wake up predominantly every single day in their life, they will be stuck. Their legacy will be delayed. They will never become that person that can make a big enough impact that will fulfill the potential that they have inside of themselves. And so owning and controlling your time is critical to living a legacy life. And most people just delay that idea of their legacy, of their greatest desires and passions for one day. And that one day just doesn't come. And so that's, for me, money's never the objective. It never is. And so when we build game plans for people, we have them set a 90-day target of what they're working for financially, but we also have them set a legacy target, right? And how to build and live a fulfilling life today, right? Do something difficult and then celebrate. Do something difficult and then celebrate. Do something difficult and then celebrate. And this starts to build the muscle of a legacy isn't what you leave. A legacy is defined by how you live. And then if you live in a way that draws people to you, that you serve other people with your talents, then money will just enhance that. It'll just give you a bigger, broader reach to impact and touch more people. And so for me, that's what really fires me up, is helping people live a legacy life using money as a tool to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for me, I can speak right to that, right? Like, for years, man, when I was in that state of just hustle and grind and like trying to make more, keep more, all of that, and then grow my money, I was in a place of just like, I wasn't in a place of thinking about legacy. Yeah. I was in a place of thinking about, where's my next paycheck going to come from? And I think a lot of people, I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years. You've been doing it forever too. And it's like, I see a lot of people in that same state, that same, lower level thinking, I would say. So it's so vital to really figure that out, right? To figure out, your financial resources and have resources flowing to you, right? So you're not constantly worried about where's the next check or next job or next client or next whatever, where that next thing's going to come from, right?
Absolutely. It's Maslow hierarchy of needs. That's really what it is. You've got to build that baseline, that foundation, take care of, because dude, at the end of the day, if you don't know where your next meal's coming from, if you're living in scarcity, then legacy will never, ever even have the possibility of crossing your mind. But if you can put in those levels to where you step into your life and you're truly looking internal to say, what unique gifts, skills, talents, and abilities do I have? And how then can I put those in the service of other people? Because Bryan, I know you and I connect on a lot of different things, but we look at the world today, and I feel like for many of us, we look at the world and it's just filled with overwhelming problems, and no single individual can solve all of the problems. It doesn't matter who's elected next president. The problems are so massively big. And here, in my opinion, here's why. Problems have a purpose, right? Problems are meant to awaken each one of us to what our talents are, because things that you can do, right? Problems that you can solve in your life that are natural to you, those are difficult for most people. And as you live your God-given purpose, you can solve problems for other people. And here's two things that happen. You make the world a better place. You find fulfillment because you're using your skills, talents, and abilities in the service of other people. And from an economic standpoint, oftentimes you make money doing it, right? And so the problems in the world today, the reason they're so comprehensively big is, I believe, and my wife always tells me I make up statistics. So here's a made up statistic, but I believe 97% of people are living their life asleep. Like, their talents and abilities, if they're being used, are being used at such a minuscule level in such a small way to earn a paycheck, right? That's all they're using it for. So those problems are meant to wake us up. And I believe once people wake up, and that only can happen through financial freedom, like as people wake up, the problems that exist right now, and we're trying to hope politicians will solve them for us, man, they disappear overnight. They disappear overnight as we individually.
Well, you know what? One thing I love that you say is that your greatest asset, your number one greatest asset is you, right? And then secondly is your business, typically, right? Because you have more control of that, right? So exactly what you said here, you know, is in perfect alignment with that, right? And then outside of that, there's all types of other investment strategies to grow your money passively, to grow your money actively. I mean, there's all types of other avenues and other channels, which is a whole nother can of worms that you talk about on your show. But I think that what you just said is you nailed it on the head. It's, you know, the fastest way, first of all, always invest in yourself. I mean, that's why you're here listening to this show. I'd highly encourage you to listen to Ryan's show. And like for me, same thing, right? Like my best investment is always in my business, right? My first myself and then my business, right? And if you have expertise, you have skills, you have, you know, results for others that other people want, that's going to be your ticket, right? That's going to be your ticket to more income. That's going to be your ticket to more opportunities. That's going to be your ticket to create wealth. And then there's all types of other strategies that are tactical in terms of growing your money and all that type of thing. But to me, I think it's really, I wasn't able to think about legacy until I cracked the money code, until I figured out how to repeatedly and, you know, consistently reproduce new clients, new income streams, new opportunities. I was constantly thinking about it. Right. And I think a lot of people in the market are there. That's where they're at. They're constantly chasing that next shiny object, that next product launch, that next affiliate, that next client. Right. They're in that hamster wheel. Right. And they can't even think about, I'm talking not even people at a low level. I'm talking about people at a high level too. They're constantly chasing that. So they're never really thinking about legacy, right? Until they're much older, right? They're certainly not in their 30s, 40s, 20s. Or likely 50s thinking about legacy. I find most people really aren't thinking about this concept of legacy until they're in their 60s, 70s, until it's too late.
A lot of those people, what I've discovered is they're scared of their legacy, right? At that point, yeah, they have a legacy of money, but they're scared to give that money to anyone because they haven't prepared their heirs, their future generations with the skill sets required to preserve and to utilize as a producer that money. And so now you see this whole movement of people wanting to give all of their money away because their legacy is, yeah, I've got money, but I haven't been a good parent. I haven't been a good role model. I haven't invested in my children to help them perpetuate the family name. So, you know, the way I look at it is there's mindsets and skill sets in three basic silos when it comes to money before you can ever think about legacy. It's what you talked about. You have to have the mindset and the skill set to make money, to use your talents in the service of others and to make money. And if you're ever stuck in your life, that's the number one place you go, right? Because that's going to give you certainty because it relies on you, right? And if you're looking for someone else to come save you, you're always going to be stuck. So making money is the first place, and that's your first investment. But then once people have a little bit of scratch, a little bit of money, they get so confused. You know, having money makes us do kind of squirrely things sometimes, right? And, you know, they've worked so hard and they go out and spend it. We live in a very consumer driven world where we're always trying to buy the latest and greatest thing to give us that, you know, to fill that void of happiness inside of our life. It'll never be filled by things, but it's making money and then it's not spending it or investing it. That's the third thing you do. The second thing is you got to figure out how to keep it, right? And man, the more money you make, there are moochers and looters. There are predators and creditors everywhere you go. And even if you're one of those successful people, you have a bigger target on your back because, oh, you've made money. You must have done something dishonest or deceitful or bad, and you don't need all that money. Why don't I come take it from you and I'll redistribute it, right? So the more money you make, the bigger target you have on your back from taxes, from predators, from creditors, from all kinds of different things, from inflation, from markets. So you've got to figure out how to keep the money you have. So making money and then keeping money, those are two competing skill sets. Then with the money that you've kept, you've got to turn it into cash flow, not net worth, but cash flow that's independent of your time. And if you can just master those, and that's a very simplistic way to put it, but if you can master the art, I call them a financial IQ in each one of those areas, then money becomes your servant. You are the master over that inanimate object of money, and you can put it to work to help you achieve your goals and your objectives. And once you have that system running, then legacy becomes the natural part. How can I give back? How can I prepare my heirs? How can I, help the people inside of my community, the people inside of my business? How can I do more with the resources that I've been blessed with?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I would say, so thinking about, okay, so I've been with you on this journey of launching your expertise, right? It started back in Inner Circle, and then we worked together. We launched the brand, Cashflow Tactics. What advice would you give now, right? It's been several years since you've launched your expertise online. You've scaled that impact and your expertise. What would you give? What kind of advice would you give to someone who hasn't yet cracked the code to be able to produce 7 figures plus? And statistically, I mean, we know in ClickFunnels, I mean, there's 102,000 people that use it every single month. And there's 1,000 people out of that group. So it's less than 1% that actually have generated over 7 figures. So, for everybody else listening that hasn't cracked that code, because I always say, Ryan, once you do your first million, it's a lot easier to do a million, right? Once you do 10 million, it's a lot easier to do it again, right? Because you figure things out. So what would you say would be some of your greatest advice for those that are on this path, they're on this journey, and maybe they've done 5 figures, 6 figures, but they haven't cracked 7 figures.
Yeah, man. Here's what I would say. And dude, you talk to anyone who's been successful in the make money game, and it comes down to a few simple skill sets that they master, and they do them over and over and over. And it's so monotonous, and you have to fall in love with the monotonous process of getting good at a set of skills, right? And I think especially in the online marketing world, there's all these latest and greatest. Do this, and this is going to help. Do that, and this is going to help. And all these different tactics out there that come and go, that change it seems like every single day. But there are a few core basic principles. They're not sexy, right? They're not prevalent. They're not what most people are looking for, the fast, easy button, but let everything go. Let everything go and just focus. And Bryan, that's when we came to you. We had tried a little bit of everything in the ClickFunnels world, and we had marginal success across the board, but nothing exponential. And when we came to you, we said, look, man, we're shutting everything down. We're going to shut our business to a certain extent down. We're going to stop trying to do all the things on Facebook, all the podcast. We're stopping all the little things, and we're just going to do the basics. And for us, the basic at that time was launching a webinar to a mastermind. And once we got really good at doing that for 18 months, Bryan, 18 months is every single week. What did we do? We ran the webinar again. Yeah. And then once we ran the webinar, we took the people and we worked with them in a mastermind. And then next week, what did we do? We ran ads. We ran the webinar again for 18 months. I don't think we missed a single week. Yeah. And we did it over and over and over and over and over and over again until I could do that thing standing on my head with my eyes closed. Right. And that consistency is what built the skill set to master that first level of making 6 figures. Then once we had that, we were able to bolt on the next thing that we could add on. But then we had to do that consistently for a period of time and just master simple daily habits over and over and over again. And I think that's the problem with most people, especially entrepreneurs, right? We're constantly chasing the next thing. And because we're constantly chasing the next thing, we never master anything. And man, we did a webinar. We never launched it officially because we didn't want to be too detrimental to the ClickFunnels community. But the webinar that we launched is why most 2 Comma Club winners are broke. Right? They've never mastered that. Maybe they've figured out how to make money, but they haven't figured out how to keep it. And it's those simple, basic skills that you have to master. So if you're trying to make money, turn everything off, do the simple, basic stuff, and master the process more than anything.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. So ultimately, you jumped right into my next question, which was, when you launched your expertise, what was your offers, your funnel, and your ad strategy? And you said it, right? You said part of it, which was, right, you did a webinar consistently every week for 18 months, and you did over and over and over and over and over again, which most people won't do because they want to do one and then automate it and then never think about it again, right? Or what's even better is they don't even want to do it live. They want to just automate it out of the gate, which I think is funny when I hear that too. But so you did offer-wise, you had a course, right, teaching your information. I think one of the most awesome things about your story is that you guys, all of the stuff that you put into your course was stuff that you were talking to people on the phone with one-on-one.
Dude, it was so funny.
Or in small groups.
It was so funny. The course, man, we just took our YouTube channel and said, look, we've never hit anything. We've told people, you could go watch our entire course on YouTube right now, right? And we put that out that was the very first things that we put out, but we put it behind a little teeny firewall because when it was free, no one paid attention. When we put it behind a firewall of, hey, you got to pay a little bit of money, then people paid attention to it. It was so funny. But yes, it was organized in a little bit more of an organized, consistent step 1, step 2, in the course than it was on YouTube. But there wasn't any new insights that you paid for that we didn't give away for free. We just made people pay for it. Then we did a game plan. Then we worked with the people that wanted to ascend in a mastermind. And dude, Bryan, I remember every single Friday we'd get together. We talk about what worked, what didn't on the webinar that Thursday, the night before. And we make the tinkers, like we'd make the adjustments with the ads, with the copy, with the webinar. And then we'd run the script again. And we just do it over and over and over until we dominated that play. That was our go-to play. Yeah. And man, we've used that same consistency with everything we've launched inside of the company. And once we mastered one level, then we added level 2 and then the next level and then the next level. But everything we've added has been a process of falling in love with the process. That's all it is. It's just been doing consistent things repeatedly.
That's great. Yeah. Fall in love with the process. I love that. What would you say, thinking back, this is 2 parts. So what was one thing you learned the hard way on your journey of launching your expertise and scaling it? And then the second component of that was, what was one thing that you wished, looking back, right? I mean, we do have to enjoy the process because it creates our own story, right? I think, we go through hard times. It makes us better, right? So not to say that it would make it easier, but where you're at now, looking back, what do you wish you would have known sooner than what you know now along the journey?
Dude. I think the hardest thing was, comparing what I wanted, but misaligning where I was currently at, right? Because when I first got in the inner circle, I would look at what people were doing at that moment and say, that must be the key, right? It's a podcast. That must be the key. It's a YouTube channel. That must be the key. They're a mastermind. There were hundreds of things, right? Because everyone was doing something based on where they were at in their business cycle. And I kept looking at those things saying, we need that, we need that, we need that. And we would trial those little things. The better question I should have asked is I should have asked people, what did you do when you were in my position to get the success that you were at? And that's the question that I asked you on the ski slopes up in Jackson Hole. And you're like, dude, it's a webinar. I'm like, cool. I've never done a webinar twice in a row. I've done a webinar and then I've gone on to the next thing. So that's all it is. Like, it's just figuring out what they did when they were in my spot and then doing that thing rather than trying to look at where they're at now and saying, I'm going to duplicate what they're doing today.
Yeah, that's so good. Cause we're in high level masterminds, right? And we're getting like a flood of this tactic and this strategy and that tactic and this strategy. And by the time we're done, we've got a notebook full of things that work. And we're like, yeah, let's try these 5 things, and then we go off in all those different directions. Mind you, we probably should have just done one thing. And I think you nailed it on the head too, as well as there's a timing for things. Right? Like, think about this. I've been doing this for 17 years. I just now launched a podcast within the last couple of months, right? I didn't try to launch a podcast when I first started in this industry. I got really good at delivering results in the agency side, right? Before I ever even thought about writing a book or before I ever even thought about publishing the podcast, right? And I think you gave some great wisdom there, because what you see other people doing doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing that yet. It might be something that you put on the plan, right? But look at Russell, look at Grant Cardone, look at Gary Vee. Everybody thinks like, oh, these guys have such massive audiences and they podcast, so I need to be podcasting. Yep. And yeah, that's a great thing to be doing, to build an audience, to add value, to do all of those things. But is it at the right time for you to do that? Right. If you don't have anything to sell, it's useless.
100%, man. And once, we spent the first 18 months, maybe 2 years in the inner circle, just start, stop, because we tried a little bit of everything. And it wasn't until we narrowed our focus on the one thing. Then when we showed up to those inner circle meetings, man, they were so infinitely more valuable because we weren't searching for the next thing. If we heard something that was interesting, we'd put it on kind of the pin board and say, we'll come back to that when later on, right? That's an idea for the future. But once we knew what we had to focus on, we just, anything that fit in that very, very narrow lane, it just added to that expertise and blew that narrow lane up faster. So it allowed us to narrow our focus and get bigger results by focusing on one thing. And then, on the flip side of that, I think the second half of your question was, how would I have enjoyed the process a little bit more? I think we all fall into this trap, right? And I think the human experience is constantly, in my opinion, it's a process of remembering what we already knew and somehow forgot. Right. So for me, it's remembering that problems exist for a purpose. And in the beginning, especially in my inner circle days, I thought, okay, once I have the webinar, once I get my 2 comma club, once you fill in the blank, then my business problems are going to go away, right? The challenges that I'm facing are going to go away. And that's never the case. Like those problems, I really think that, they're opportunities. They're opportunities disguised as problems. And the bigger we get, the more comprehensive we get, the bigger the problems come. And so I have to look at every problem because the problems I'm facing today are way bigger than the problems I was facing when I first started of not getting a webinar to convert. But now those problems are the next catalyst to help me become a better person, a bigger person, to deal with the next level of problems that I'll deal with at the next level. So problems don't go away. You just expand to solve bigger problems. So once you know that, like you can kind of let go of the anxiety, because in the beginning, I was always surprised that there was another problem. And I always was wondering, when's this going to get easier? Well, it doesn't, right? So once I understood what the journey was like, I could let go of the anxiety. I could stop, hoping that whatever, peaceful times were right around the corner, and start to embrace the problems and the growth that will come from them as part of the process, and actually learn to love them. So that's for me, that's been the last maybe 3 years. I know I'm going to face more problems, and I know those problems are opportunities, and I've let go of trying to seek a life without problems, because that's a life of death.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. It's true. I mean, problems make us who we are, make us who we become. It's all part of the journey. I think, I think you nailed it. Once you embrace challenges are what make us grow, right? I mean, if we're not growing, we're dying. We're never standing still. So shifting to a higher level, here about legacy and thinking about passing the torch, which is probably one of my most favorite topics here. With legacy, we're thinking about our kids' future, right? I think now more than ever, this topic is so important. When I think about legacy, I think about Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich, right? I mean, Napoleon Hill wrote that book, who knows how many years ago. It's been a long time. It's been decades, if not a century. He wrote it so long ago, but people are still reading that book and people are still getting value from it. Think about Zig Ziglar and all of his material that he left us with, right? People are still getting value from that. Abraham Lincoln, you've got the 12 disciples. I mean, there's so many great men and women that have gone before us that their legacy is still continuing to be carried on, right? And their expertise is still impacting people's lives. So for you, as you think about legacy, what are some of the things that you're doing on, I would say, 3 different levels? Financially, that's one level. The next one would be with your expertise, your wisdom, your proprietary process, all of that stuff. That's one bucket for me. And then lastly, spiritually, I was with a buddy of mine. We were golfing, and he was talking about, and he's like a mentor to me. He was talking about how he's putting things in place now so that when he's no longer here in physical form, he can still be, reaching people for the kingdom. He can continue to be bringing people closer to God after he's gone, right? And that completely blew my mind, because up until that point, I hadn't really thought about how is my life going to be continuing to make a spiritual impact.
Man, I love that.
Right.
And there's so many different avenues we can talk about with that. I'm going to start with the avenue of really expertise, and then lean into money a little bit. The first thing that you have to do to create a legacy is you have to practice that 10,000 hour rule, right? And most people won't leave a legacy because they've never mastered anything in their life big enough to have a legacy-like impact, right? And whether it's 10,000 hours, whether it's 5, whether it's 20,000 hours, like you've got to be so insanely, to a certain extent, focused on something to develop an expertise in that will then, once that you've got that expertise, that will then be big enough to solve big enough problems that will leave a legacy type impact. I don't think most people have the commitment to get that far in their life, in any area of their life, whether it's their personal fitness, their marriage, their finances, their business, whatever that is. So again, let time work for you, not against you. You can't expect to be an expert on anything in 6 months. That's just the very first step to probably a 10-year process and journey. So give yourself the permission, if you want to leave a legacy, that it's going to take a long time. Embrace that and let time work for you, and develop your legacy expertise now. Because if you're in your 60s, it's going to be a lot harder to develop an expertise from 60 to 70. No matter where you're at, make time work for you by extending the timeline. That's number one. Number two, I don't know it personally, my grandparents or my great grandparents. I don't know them. Like, I know their names, but I know very little about their stories. And I became acutely aware of this a couple of years ago. And my grandparents are all passed away. I have no living grandparents right now. And my great grandparents, I don't even know half of their names or their stories or where they came from. And so the thing I think about with that is, if they didn't leave anything and this isn't good or bad, right? It is what it is. But if there was nothing for me that pulled me to their story, I would have to then be conscious enough to go seek out their story. On the flip side of that, what if I developed my expertise and I had a pile of money, right? A pile of money that future generations could access under the umbrella of a very specific family mission, right? And in order to access that money, they had to follow the infrastructure of that family mission and use it to perpetuate and propel the family mission, right? Now, if that were the case, then I would come back and access that money generation down the road, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for great-great-grandpa Ryan Lee, who did XYZ to create this money to give me the opportunity, and I'm going to use it under this framework. Right. And so for me, I think that's really, money is kind of a sticky tool. It's not like I want to just pass along money, because if it's just money without the skill set and the mindset, the money will be lost in 1 to 2 generations. But if I can pass along money and protect it in an infrastructure where a mission and a family objective can be accomplished, then my family will plug back in to that mission and objective, access money as a tool, be producers, and expand the family mission and legacy. And think about the Rockefellers. Like, the Rockefellers are generationally wealthy because they practice the habits necessary to perpetuate generational wealth. And generational wealth isn't money. Generational wealth is about people. And when you invest in people, then money follows. So I think that's really what it is for me. It's develop your expertise, right? You can't expect or be entitled to a legacy unless you've built a legacy. So start building a legacy. Then once you've built that legacy in problems that you can solve, money will likely be the offset, or at least a component of that. Protect the money and use the money as a sticky, as gravity, to pull your future generations back in to a more comprehensive family structure. And remember, family wealth isn't money. Family wealth is about people.
Yeah, you know what? I love that. And you just reminded me of something that I want to ask you, because when I was at your house, we had talked a little bit about it. But I love you have really like a system for how you raise your kids, right? Like, you do a lot of really cool stuff with kids that I didn't do growing up, and I don't know a lot of people that have. So would you mind sharing, like, talking a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because I think what you just said speaks right to that. Like, you're developing your children to become responsible adults so that they can become responsible with your legacy and with your wealth when you're no longer.
Yeah, man. And there's a lot of different components to that, but I think what it comes down to more than anything is we created a family mission. And I'm a very visual, very, very visual person. And think about some of the brands. And I think today, as Americans, we're kind of going away from like the big brands to a certain extent and adopting maybe smaller brands. But just think back, like, I remember back when I was growing up, like, I wanted a pair of Jordans so bad. That's what I wanted. I wanted the brand of Jordans, right? Or maybe it's Nike, or maybe it's whatever the brands are today. I don't know. But like, I wanted that. And so I wanted to adopt the same component inside of my family. I want my family to be able to symbolize a brand, and go back to the ancient European empires, right? Everything was symbolized by a family crest, and that family crest meant something. People knew you by your family name, and whether they knew Ryan Lee or not, if I showed up with the family crest, the family seal, that meant something. That helped people understand who I was and what I stood for and what I represented. So we adopted that same thing. We have a family crest, and we went through a whole process of how we created it. And then it becomes the framework that we educate within. There are some core family values that we try to model and stand up to or live up to. So we use that crest. It's on my kids' shirts. They have hats. Whenever we take family trips, it's family trips with a purpose. And then again, it's preparing my kids. We use money as a tool all the time. We have lots of little components that we use to help my kids understand that producers create value. And when you create value, dollars follow value. And so we help my kids understand how to be producers in the world, how to use their talents, how to be stewards over money. And I'm trying to prepare them, because they're going to inherit family money. And we've talked a lot about that. So we have weekly family councils, and it allows us to talk about our family values, our family mission, what we're up to, any challenges that we're facing this week. And then we square up on the value that they've created both in the house and outside of the house through money. And so it's just a framework to help us interact more proactively with our kids now, and help help parent them to be stewards over money, but more than anything, help them be producers underneath the family crest.
Yeah, I love that. And whenever you come out with a course on
Dude,
your
we got
family,
it. We did it. Yeah, we got it.
Got it. That's awesome.
I'm excited to talk to you about that, man. We got it all put together.
Nice. Okay, so now talking about scaling your impact, what would you say was one of the lessons that you learned on your journey from scaling from 7 to 8 figures, or like one important thing that you would like to share?
Man, I think I've come back to this in many different ways. But to go from 7 to 8 figures for me was more about people than anything else. And it wasn't about my customers. Like the customers, yes, our product, our service, that's very, very important. We have to deliver an amazing world-class product and service and help people have a transformation. But in the beginning, like when we ran the webinars, it was my story. And then I worked with you on a game plan. And then you came into a mastermind. Like it was me getting results for other people. And the last 3 or 4 years, I've had to really adopt the mindset that I build teams and that others' successes within my team are my successes. And I celebrate the wealth that they earn through the impact that they make to our outside customers. And so for me, going from 7 to 8 figures has been 100% about building a mission-driven team and pouring everything I used to pour into individuals inside of their own personalized game plan. I pour that into my team. And now I build teams to get impact versus me trying to get a direct impact with other people. And it's been a challenge, and it's been extremely rewarding on both sides.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't traverse that journey because they have to reproduce themselves, right? And in order for you to reproduce yourself, you need a team, right? That's going to reproduce you, or your efforts,
100%,
right?
Yep, 100%.
You can only make so much impact yourself.
And then give them the permission to bring their talents into it. Like I think we're so much better now because in the beginning it was just me and Brad. Right. And then we added more people to it. And, in the beginning, we tried to restrict them. Hey, do it this way because this is the way Ryan does it, or do it this way because this is the way Brad does it. And, once we let that go, and just like we did with our family, we established our core values of what we stand for as team members, what we stand for in the marketplace, how we interact and operate with customers. Like once we establish those core values, then that becomes the overarching umbrella that we hold people accountable to those standards. And you rise to those standards or you fall out of the company because you're not rising to those standards. And so that gave me a framework to help educate and train and then give people permission to bring their own unique skills, talents, and abilities to the table underneath the framework of the mission and the values. And man, I tell you what, that's made us as a company so much more successful and allowed us to scale our impact tremendously.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And I can only imagine that was a journey. Right.
Oh, dude, yeah.
That was probably a bit of a journey.
Still a journey, man. Still,
hiring the right people, training the right people, letting some people go, keeping some people, right? I mean, that's typically a journey.
100%. Right? Hey, Brian, hold on 1 minute. Let me close this door.
Yeah. Oh, Isaac, this thing is like chopping in and out. Like I have trouble hearing him sometimes. Yeah, it's weird.
Sorry about that. I'm doing some vacuuming out there.
No, that's your mic.
Oh, it's this one? Oh, it's over here. Right. Oh. Okay, cool. We good? We good to go?
Yep.
Right. Oh, okay, cool. Okay. All right, so we have 2 more. We're wrapped. Ready? Oh, okay. All right, Ryan. So I love that. Tell me what's something new or exciting that's coming up that you're pumped about?
Dude, so much exciting. So this couldn't have come at a better time. We just finished our quarterly planning for our companies last week. So we had our team members from all across the country fly in here to the mountains of Utah. We sat with them and kind of checked where we're at in the quarter, spot checked ourselves with them, the 3-year plan that we have, and really set some targets to help move us forward. But I think the thing I'm most excited about, and this has been an evolution over time, Brian, when you and I sat down and we really built out the infrastructure of what is today Cashflow Tactics, we wanted to serve all people, right? And I'll never forget when I first sat down with Russell Brunson, I was so excited to come to the table with him because I had the solution that would solve all problems, right? That was what was in my mind. And I remember Russell asked me, he's like, so what do you guys do? And we told him all the financial stuff that we do. And he said, well, who do you serve? Okay. And the response that I gave him was, well, I serve, we serve all people with money. Like everyone that has money, that's who we serve, right? And it was all things. And I remember, I was like so proud. My chest was all puffed out because I serve all people. I have the greatest opportunity since Amazon, right? And I remember Russell kind of laughed at and said, you know what? You're dead in the water. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, well, I serve all people with money. And so over time, we've really had to narrow in and refine who it is that we serve. And we've really got amazing results serving traditional 9-to-5 employees inside of Cashflow Tactics. We have a very specific model and a method that we use in that company to help 9-to-5 employees take their fixed income, right? Because most people have a salary, maybe some bonus potential, but they have a relatively fixed and predictable income. We take that income and we turn it into financial freedom in 10 years or less. Now, over the last several years, we've had a lot of entrepreneurs that resonate with our message because our message is rise up, you're your greatest asset, live free, all these things that entrepreneurs also want, right? And so we brought them in, and even though the principles are the same, they're totally rearranged for an entrepreneur, right? They're totally in a different order, and we have to help entrepreneurs understand a different process to go through to achieve the same version of freedom that an employee also wants. But what we realized is we can't serve two masters. We can't, serve entrepreneurs and employees. And when we do our live events, they didn't mesh very well because employees want to talk about things differently than entrepreneurs. So with all of that being said, we've decided that Cashflow Tactics is and will continue to serve 9-to-5, great producer-minded employees. We've now since pulled all of our entrepreneurs out, and we're basically pushing the duplicate button. We're going right back to the beginning, just the exact same thing that we did with you almost 5 years ago now. We're launching a company for entrepreneurs. And so we've got a team for Cashflow Tactics. We've built a team for entrepreneurs. Brad and I have been working with these entrepreneurs in kind of an incubated format for the last 18 months. We've verified and validated the method that will take them through. And we're starting from the beginning with a group of entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited about that. I'm honestly a little bit overwhelmed by it as well. When we first launched, before Cashflow Tactics ever was, if you go back on YouTube and look up the very first videos out there, we launched the Entrepreneur's Playbook. And we put that up on the shelf because entrepreneurs are a lot harder to work with than employees because they have so many different facets that we have to kind of get our arms around. But we've figured out and built a model to help entrepreneurs, and we're super stoked about it. So we're launching that currently. It's exciting. Well, we've launched a team. We've, brought on all the support and resources that we need on that end. So I'm excited to be able to serve the group of people that originally we felt compelled to serve from the very beginning.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's part of the journey, right? It's part of the journey. Everyone thinks they need to have their quote avatar, dialed in when they first start. And the reality is that it evolves. You start serving that particular audience, and then you realize, oh yeah, I don't serve everybody. I serve this group. And then you start serving this group, and then you say, well, maybe I need a slight, shift. And I love that because in my opinion, the entrepreneurs, they probably need more help than everyone else, right? Number one. And number two, I think, I think what I'm future projecting here is that as you serve the entrepreneurs will reach everybody else. It's kind of like if you look at Lululemon as a brand, they've, done over $1 billion in revenue. They go after that influential woman and influential husband who then is able to impact both young and old demographics and then really reach everybody. Totally. So I think that's what's going to happen. I'm doing a little prediction here right now.
Hey man, you give us all your
as you serve entrepreneurs.
Give us all your predictive powers. I love it.
As you serve, those entrepreneurs, right? I think you're going to naturally, and so I'm really happy that you're not killing the group that's serving everybody else, because there's a lot of everybody else out there that need your help too. So it's cool to see them segmented into different brands. Lastly, where would be the best place? I mean, most of my people are entrepreneurs. So where would the best place for people to learn more about what you guys do for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. That's going to be launching here in the next couple of weeks. It's Altitude. Okay, so Cashflow Tactics is financial freedom in 10 years or less. We use the financial freedom formula. It's about rising up and living free. Altitude is, man, and I love the verbiage that we used during this podcast. It's about understanding what your greatest asset is. It's your life. You are the asset that drives everything. And the more you see yourself as an asset, the more you can invest in your mindset, your skill set, your network. Then it's about securing your skills and abilities and reducing your taxes. Like there's so many things that can be done to reduce taxes on active income. So it's about making money, keeping the money that you make, and then turning the money that you make into cash flow. Same, very similar method, but it starts off first and foremost. If you can just figure out how to make and keep the money that you have, that's 80% of the game for an entrepreneur. 80% of the game is just right there. Investing becomes such a secondary thing. And in many cases, it's very rarely needed to a certain extent, because if you can turn $1 into 5, 10, 15, 20 inside of your business and then figure out how to keep it, then the game of financial freedom becomes so simple. So it's Altitude. Altitude is the company. And our mission is really empowering entrepreneurs to maximize their life, their liberty, and their legacy.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. So guys, follow Ryan. In my opinion, you've got to get the financial piece dialed in order to truly get out of that space of survival, or get out of that space of not enough and get in that place of abundance, right? Because we don't create as well as we do when we're in abundance. At least that's my experience. 100%. And I've gone through, I'm not a trust fund baby. So I made my way, like everybody else. And when I was in those moments, those times where it was a struggle, when money was tight, when money was the only thing I could think about because I'd have to think about more coming in, I wasn't creating from my best place, and being in that place for, many years now, I can say that it's a lot easier to create things that work well when you're in a place of abundance. So definitely follow Ryan on his journey. He's got definitely some exciting things coming up, and be sure to listen to our episode. Ryan and I are about to jump into our episode, which we're going to continue this conversation on his show. And Bryan, why don't you talk a little bit about your show for a second while we transition.
Man, I love that. So, and Bryan, appreciate it, man. I'm excited. Like, I want to share our story. And so I think we'll save that for the Rise Up, Live Free podcast. So our podcast, look, I really believe whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're an employee, I think anyone that has a mindset to win and to be successful is a producer, right? And so we talk a lot about raising up a producer revolution of people that are willing to face challenges, that know that they are their greatest asset, that they are their greatest investment, and that the more they can dump into themselves through coaching, through mindset, through expertise, through consistency, all those different things, the greater quality of life they're going to have. And so our podcast is the Rise Up, Live Free podcast. And everyone comes to our podcast because they want the second part. They want the live free, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee, I think most of us that resonate with everything we're talking about is they want more to their life. And there's something holding them back. And most people are looking for that something. And a lot of times they're looking at investing. And, investing, in my opinion, isn't the thing, right? It's about rising up. It's about taking control. It's about increasing your mindsets. It's about increasing your skill sets. It's about being able to make an impact, make money in the world, and truly rising up. Then investing in all of that other stuff to live free, that just is a natural offset, a natural component. But you are the driver of your life. And so it's about rising up, taking control, and using money as a tool. So Rise Up, Live Free podcast, that's what we talk about.
Awesome. Love that, Ryan. Awesome. Thank you for joining me on Legacy Builders, and I would encourage you to come back to the next episode next week to get more clarity on your journey to launch your expertise online, scale your impact, and build your legacy. If you're ready to get the process started of launching your expertise online the right way, then I recommend go to launchexpertise.com, or maybe you're at a place where you're ready to really scale your expertise and your impact. Go to launchexpertise.com. There you'll have several options. Number one, you can get a free copy of my brand new book, The Entrepreneur Evangelist, which I share the secrets that have unlocked more than $300 million of results for my clients, my partners, and our own campaigns. You could also join a 33 days of coaching with me that's free, where I give you insights and wisdom on your journey to launching your expertise and scaling your impact over the course of 33 days. And that's worth at least $5,000, but for right now, you can get it for free. And lastly, if you're someone who wants to take the absolute faster, smarter path when it comes to launching your expertise online and scaling your impact, I'd recommend scheduling a call with my team where we can see how we can support you to crush goals and generate 7 or 8 figures yourself in a short period of time. We have more awards than nearly anyone in the entire community, and for good reason. And we would love to help you just like we've helped them. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Legacy Builders.